basically, there are two main businesses that you can build as a developer. You can build something which is a tech product, so some kind of SaaS company, or you can build kind of agency or something like that. If you're starting something from complete zero, in general, the agency tends to make more sense. But as a developer, it's not usually the first thing that people go to. I've been a software developer for the better part of about 7 years now, 7.5 years. I've tried a lot of things in business. I've kind of always been between this like tech and software and then business as well. These interests have been very much at my heart for a very long time. And I've been running this business for a while and I've learned a lot of things. And I was recently having a conversation with a friend of mine about different kinds of businesses, particularly tech businesses that you can run. And I wanted to speak a little bit on that because I think there's a lot of misconceptions. And I know that I used to have these too, actually. And so I tried a lot of different businesses before the company that I run now, and I made a lot of mistakes. And so I've learned a lot from those mistakes. And I thought to share that because I know that a lot of people think about starting businesses and want to start something of their own, but sometimes lack certain perspectives. The thing most developers do is they go straight into SaaS businesses and tech products and that kind of stuff because it's big, it's shiny, they get billion-dollar valuations. You see them in Silicon Valley all over the news. You see the $50 million exit headlines and you think, brilliant, this is me. I'm going to build something for like 2 years and then I'm going to sell it. It's going to be great. Happy days. The problem is what most people forget to account for is SaaS is a fundamentally different game. It is a product game. And so if you build a tech product, you are building a product. If you build a tech agency or some kind of software consultancy or some kind of services-based business, those are fundamentally two very different business models. The thing that most people underestimate when it comes to tech companies is you must fund the development of a product yourself or you build it yourself, right? The reason why most developers want to build tech companies is because they can build something. And yes, you can build something, but you build it unless you have existing distribution channels. It's very hard to win at that game because then once you have the product, the person who wins is the person who wins in distribution, and you have to fight people. Like if you're bootstrapping something, so this presumes that you have no investment. If you're fighting somebody who's from Silicon Valley, who's got, $1 million behind them in VC money, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight and you're going to lose. And there's a really good story by Andrew Wilkinson, who's this entrepreneur who founded a little agency and then grew it, over 10 years or whatever. But eventually he started reinvesting profits to make his own product, his own productivity tool. And at the time, there was no tool that did that. And then Asana came out. Only difference between these two tools, they did fundamentally very, very similar things. Only difference was Andrew Wilkinson, who ran a product design and development studio. So he knew all about this kind of stuff. He knew how to build great products, how to do great design, all that. And then there was Asana, which was like this more, I think at the start, the design wasn't as good, but you've heard of Asana nowadays, and they were VC funded. The only difference was that these guys were VC funded and they could burn money in marketing. They could burn money in customer acquisition, and basically they could force more volume through the system to learn from their users faster. And then they could buy more and more developers and just build faster. And Andrew Wilkinson, I think, ended up pouring 10 million into that company over 10 years, and he didn't get anything out of it. And he lost that fight because he could not afford to lose as much money as the VC guys. If you are competing against capital markets will beat you every time, unless you have investment as well, or you have your own, I don't know, if you come from a ridiculously wealthy family and you can just fund an idea, then great, good for you, pour money into it. But if you are constrained by resources, which it was my situation when I started, a services-based business will take you a lot further. Now, I personally know this because I tried to build tech products before. When I was 16, I co-founded this ed tech company, and we didn't go anywhere. We ran a school and a trial with a school, but the problem was we didn't have product market fit, and it took us a really long time to realize that. And I tried to tell the team, and they wanted to build more features, and I didn't want to work for free anymore, and so I left. Finding product market fit is hard, but even had we found that, to then bootstrap it takes a very long time because the way SaaS companies make money, and the way most tech products, not all, but a lot of them do, is by selling volume. And volume, like the companies that make money by selling volume, that is a distribution game at the start or a longevity game because you take a long time to grow and you need money to survive that long time without, most tech companies lose money for years before they ever make a dime in profit. And then at the end, you have, a big payout. And so I don't think SaaS products, tech products, they're great to build, but maybe not at the start. And I share this because I tried to build my own tech products. I wish I had started this agency that I'm doing now. I wish I had started that sooner. You don't need any cash to start an agency. You can spend on things online to basically try and learn faster, but also you can, like, I didn't spend anything on online. Well, at the start, I have come to spend something like 20,000 in various forms of coaching and online programs. But at the start, I basically just threw myself into it, and I was trying to find clients, and I just used social media, which, like, if you just build stuff, start by working for free for people and slowly ask them for money, and you can build a business from that. And that will over time get you a lot more cash flow than a SaaS business. A SaaS business has an awesome exit, but those 10 years that you play trying to build the thing, typically you don't have that much of a payout. And if you do take investment, so if you do raise investment, there's another consideration, which is if you take investment from a VC, you are basically a bet for that VC. The VCs, venture capitalists, make money by placing one bet on 50 different races. So there's 50 horse races, they place one bet on one horse per race or whatever. And if one horse wins and they win 100x payout, and so that pays off all the guys who lost. That is the game that they play. There's a really good essay by Paul Graham called Superlinear Returns, and I recommend reading it. But basically, the premise of it is winner takes all. So, like, if the horse wins, they make a bunch of money, but if they don't, they basically don't win anything. It's a long tail distribution, if you can imagine that. So basically, there's a spike of like failures, and then it drops off very quickly, and then there's a very flat line that reaches all the way out, to the right, which is where you get the hundreds of $1 million exits. And those guys definitely make money, but there's very few people in the middle. And so what happens is basically you're either a huge failure or a huge success. That's the VC game, basically. And so if you want to play that game as a developer, it's fair enough, right? Like, if you think you can make it to the other side, totally go for it. But you just have to be aware of the game that you're playing. And it's very often like you will be hard pressed to find any kind of mediocre success. It's usually like big success or big failure. There's not so much room in the middle most of the time. Like, there's always some people, but the vast majority obviously stay in the big failure category. That's why VCs don't make that much money, right? It's because only a few of their horses win. They can't have most of them win. The problem as a founder is you are one of those horses. And so the odds are stacked against you. And if you take on investors, you cannot be extracting profit from the company, for a long time. And you'll basically just be taking a salary, right? So imagine you're taking a normal salary, and you're going to be like, if you want to make this thing work, it's going to take you years. It's a 3 to 7 year thing, right? So a 3 to 7 year window, you've dedicated yourself. Now, if you happen to end up on the side that is like big failure, huge failure, it sucks because there's no big upgrade in quality of life. Like, you basically enjoyed a salary, but were completely overstressed for the better part of 3 to 7 years. Now, like, don't get me wrong, I think there's loads of incredibly valuable experience. You might meet awesome people, 100%. But fundamentally, you basically were like underpaid to take on a lot of stress for a very long time when you may not have had the right foundations. And my thinking of setting up an agency was I get to work with other companies other tech companies, basically. And I get to see the guys who are doing things well. I get to learn from the companies. Plus, I make a little bit of cash flow that I ultimately can keep for myself. Like, that's something that I was reflecting on with a friend, and he said about my business, which was like, your business is nice because it lets you kind of design your life the way you want it. And there is ultimately nobody who I really answer to. And when you have investors, you do have to answer to them. So, but on the other side of that, investors can basically fuel you and bring you to that gunfight that is the SaaS game. And if you succeed in that payout is absolutely monstrous. But conversely, like, you must answer to them as well. To some extent, it's obviously you're still a CEO and you're still a founder. You still get a large degree of ownership and control, but you don't have total reign as much as you would if you held 100% of the company. But then, the flip side of that is also, will the agency get you to $1 billion? Probably not. Like 90% of the times, no. Service businesses cap out, right, at much smaller revenues because operationally they are much more complex to scale. Your marginal cost of reproduction is very high, whereas your marginal cost of reproduction of software is virtually zero. And so that is why, software makes so much money, but it's because the marginal cost to make one more unit of whatever you sell is zero. Once you write the code, if I sell it once or 10,000 times, it's the same, right? Whereas for my company, if I sell 10,000 customers tomorrow, I don't have the developers to fill that. And so my costs will scale proportionally to the number of clients I have in a very linear relationship. Whereas one more client means I need, let's say, one more developer, 2 more clients, 2 more developers, right? Like, I'm simplifying, but you get the idea. And so your costs scale linearly along with oftentimes your revenue and things like that. Whereas in a SaaS business, that is not the case, right? Because you write the code once and let's say your cost is $100 a month, you can sell 10,000 customers and your infrastructure might still only cost you $100 a month. That is what makes the SaaS game scalable. That is what makes it really, really interesting. And that is also, I think, that's the appeal appeal of it. That's why so many developers get into it, is because they can see that side. And it is a really cool upside, for sure. The thing that I think most developers neglect to think about, and I certainly did, was the whole other side, which is until you find product market fit, you make no money. And even when you find product market fit, it's very hard to grow because you don't have money to pour into marketing. You don't have money to allocate to, like, imagine Netflix. They get their first 100 customers. Your first 100 customers in an agency bring you a lot of money. Your first 100 customers in Netflix, let's say they pay you $10 each. That's $1,000 a month. $10 a month, 100 customers, $1,000 a month. That's not even enough to pay like a salary for a reasonably senior position or something like that. Like, it's very, very hard to hire people. You lose money for a very long time. And so that is the trouble with SaaS that I think most people don't realize. And marketing is not some like easy gimmick that you can just do. I'm just going to do a bit of marketing in happy days. Like, it's hard. The same way that building a good product is hard. It takes time, and that takes money and resources. And either, you can work for free for a very long time by yourself, but it's very hard, or you can put your own money into it if you have some. But even then, like, you can look at Andrew Wilkinson's story. He had money to put behind this product, but the problem is, if you find product market fit and somebody in Silicon Valley catches wind, you could have a good situation where maybe you get investment and that has certain implications for your quality of life or control and whatever, but you get that fuel of like a bunch of money behind you and maybe you can scale it. Or they're going to invest in somebody else who's willing to take money and going to do a very similar thing. But it's a product game and it is very competitive, because while your marginal cost of replication is very low, my cost to reproduce whatever you've made is probably very, very low as well. If you build some kind of SaaS product, like, how long will it take me to remake what you've made? It's probably not a ridiculous, unless you have some very, very specific specialty. A lot of the time, other competitors can very quickly join in the market, whereas an agency has a much bigger moat, because let's say you do $10 million a year as an agency, to kind of recreate the level of service and things takes a long time. Whereas, in theory, I could build a replica of Instagram in, a few months if I really wanted to. And like, obviously not a perfect replica, but then you also hit the marketing problem. So like, obviously as a business grows, it's always harder to replace them. But if you're bootstrapping a SaaS and somebody in Silicon Valley sees what you're doing and catches on, they build the same thing. They take a bunch of VC money and they will outspend you on ads and developers until they put you out of business. And that is what happened to Andrew Wilkinson. And I think it's a very good cautionary tale. And I think I wish somebody had shared this perspective with me a long time ago, basically before I basically tried to build a bunch of little tech things. Like, when I was 13, I did a little sandwich delivery shop and online and in my school that worked for a little while. Then I shut it down because I was delivering everything myself. I tried to scale up. I tried to write a backend in PHP. Actually, that was a terrible mistake. I've since learned my lesson. I learned Node afterwards. But, I changed something and I learned about my users and I realized they didn't like a particular kind of way that I had done things. And then I also had founder ADHD, where I was just constantly trying to build new things because I thought I should change and do a million things at once. And that lack of focus, it got me exposed to more things, but it cost me progress. The only way you can move faster is by focusing more. That's a big thing that I believe in. So yeah, I tried a lot of things. When I was 15, I joined my first hackathon and then I started to, that's when I got serious about development for startups. So I got deeper into React and Node and started getting hired as a freelancer. But instead of turning that freelancing thing into, more gigs and then an agency, I tried to build my own product. And I went ahead and tried to build that ed tech thing that I started when I was 16. And I worked there with that team for about a year. I was the only technical person on the team. And if this sounds like you, I might save you a couple of lessons. But yeah, I didn't want to do the freelancing. I wanted to build my tech product and, build a really cool tech company. And then I eventually realized that wasn't going to be, as easy as I thought. And it was really hard. And so I pivoted to I didn't pivot. I left the company. And then for a couple of months, I was kind of wandering around, not really sure what to do. And then eventually I landed on the idea of running a software development agency, consultancy type of thing. And the biggest reason behind that was I want to run a tech company. However, fundamentally, I lack the skills and I will lack resources as well. I don't have any money. I don't have any money to invest in anything. And I'm probably not that good at business, and finding product market fit is really hard, as I found out from the ed tech thing. And so then I started the agency and I started basically trying to find clients, and eventually I did. My entire thesis was I'm going to learn from these clients how to run a business and how to be better and run tech companies, and then I will eventually apply that in my own business someday. Funny thing is I've kind of, I think in many ways, fallen in love with agency work as well. I think there is a place for consultants. And yeah, I think any business can be a big business, can be a good business. So yeah, I kind of decided to double down on that. And that's been one of the better decisions I've made in a long time, because since then, I decided to stick to it even. And bear in mind, like I say it like, oh, agency gives you cash flow. Like it does. That doesn't mean it's easy. That still means you have months where you're like, how the hell am I going to pay all of this? How the hell am I going to pay my employees? How am I going to pay my team? How am I going to, like, I'm running out of runway. Like in the first year, I tried to hire contractors and that was a failure. I almost ran the company into bankruptcy because I didn't know how to get new leads. I messed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, and some of them I look back and I think like they were really obvious mistakes and I was just an idiot, but you know, it is what it is. I made them and now I'm here. And like now it's brought me a very good quality of life, but I still have a very long way to go as well. I still feel like I run a little rink-a-dink agency, despite the fact that, you know, I've got a team of, we're 5 people now. And I didn't think I'd actually have like a real team that, you know, like a full-time people and stuff like that. And so that's been really, really exciting for me. But I didn't realize it takes time, and you have to be okay with taking a while. If you are a developer and you have any questions and you are thinking about this kind of stuff, like definitely comment. I love to check comments for video ideas. So I read all of those basically, and I respond to most of them. So yeah.